So our next speaker is zooming in from Monash, Indonesia. So Profika is here. Right. So I welcome the rep from Monpack to facilitate this event, please. So, you can share your.
I can my slides now. Can you hear me, Nazirul?
Yes, can hear you. Yeah, all good? Okay, we can share.
All right.
So you can introduce.
All right, so first things first, I would like to thank Dr. Ridwan for that very insightful presentation about AI regulation. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natasha, and I am from Monash Political Awareness Club, MONPAC, and I'm very thrilled to be part of this event. So joining us online all the way from Indonesia is Associate Professor Ika Idris. Her work focuses on government communication, misinformation, and the internet's impact on society. She was a researcher at the Social Media Research Team Lab at Ohio University during her doctoral study as a Fulbright awardee. In 2020, she became the first fellow from outside the United States to train in the PhD Digital Bootcamp at Texas State University. The topic of her talk today is titled The Hidden Menace, Navigating the Disinformation Landscape Amidst Limited Access to Social Media Data. So let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Ika.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, congratulations for celebrating 25 years in Malaysia. Yeah, Indonesia. We've just entering our third year, and hopefully we can also survive the 25 years Monash campus in Indonesia. All right, so. What I'm going to talk about today is about the widespread of digital propaganda and disinformation in Indonesia, and then I'm going to discuss some collaboration in tackling disinformation, and then raise the issues of limited access to social media data. So first of all, I think all around the world, the elections suffer by the fake news, disinformation, misinformation spreading by social media troops. This is also occurred in Indonesia 2019 election, and it's not just by one candidate, but both candidates used social media troops to amplify messages, to amplify hashtags, so that it will increase their popularity. For instance, in Prabowo, my study found there's amplifiers or social media troops during the Prabowo, after the candidate debate. Both candidates use social media troops. So what are the common topics for hoaxes in Indonesia? This is results of a national survey by the Ministry of Communication and Information. Apparently, the number one hoaxes topic is related to the politics, and then continue by health, and then religion. So if there's candidate play with the politics and religious identity, it will be like a combination of disinformation. Yeah. And then which platforms that share the most hoaxes? According to the survey, it's still Facebook, but followed by online news sites, WhatsApp, YouTube, and Instagram. Apparently, Twitter only a small number, but that's because also only small number of people use Twitter. So it's only around 2 to 7% Indonesia use Twitter, but the platform itself function as a place to establish political agenda that hopefully later will be gathered by news media and amplified bigger. This time, if we talk about social media troops, what we have in our mind usually social unstructured, non-formal, outside the government agency social media troops. Yeah. But apparently, since 2017, the Indonesian government has been establishing social media troops. In 2017, there's a troops called the Synergy of Social Media Team, managed by the Coordinating Ministry of Political and Law, and then the Ministry of Communication and Information. There's also a team of, they call it Tenaga Humas Pemerintah, that also their main job is to stir frying the issues, or in Indonesia we call it goreng menggoreng issues. Yeah. Since 2020, even the agency like Ministry of Finance, for instance, they have also employee advocacy team. So this team, even though they call it employee advocacy, but one of their job is to keep the criticism, to silence the criticism. That occurred one time this year when there's a crisis, there's a corruption by the tax agency, employee of tax agency, and then we can see this employee advocacy team works to silence the criticism. So what are the objectives of these social media troops? Their main objective is actually viralisasi, or to get the government information to go viral. So they even have a procedure. For instance, if there's negative issues, the issues must be silenced or fight within 60 to 100 minutes. So it's really fast, and then they have all the procedure to silence the criticism. Other than that, the Ministry of Communication and Information also have many outlets and information networks. For instance, like there's a government's media centers, there's also 1,500 members of government PR, they have around 500 bloggers, they have around 400 community media, and then they have around like almost 700 government PR coordinating agencies. So these outlets will amplify the government message, including the message or policy or regulation that were highly criticized by the public. For instance, like the omnibus law protest, or during the KPK law protest. So I wrote about it in my upcoming book, Misguided Democracy in Malaysia and Indonesia. So what? Yeah. So after all this, after I presented all these social media troops, you can imagine how they are going to work, or how they're going to influence the public discussion during this upcoming election. So there will be massive orchestration of narrative. There will be a massive work to also silence criticism. So and that's That's just only from the government troops. I haven't even, we cannot even imagine the unstructured and non-formal social media troops, yeah. And so that because of that massive orchestration, I believe it's important to collaborate to tackle this information in the upcoming election. For instance, Monas Indonesia, in collaboration with the Independent Journalists Association, we are monitoring hate speech right now toward vulnerable communities, especially Chinese, LGBTQ, Christian, Catholic, and disabled people. Yeah, because we from our previous observation, the religious and ethnic identity will still be played in this election. What about the platforms? Yeah, platforms also collaborate. For instance, platform TikTok collabs with the General Election Supervisory Agency. But when we look at the platform's collaboration with the government agency or with the fact-checking organization, the collaboration is mainly a PRing strategy. Why I said the PRing strategy? Because, for instance, TikTok collaboration with the agency is to only establish a TikTok account for the agency to counter misinformation. But it is not clear whether TikTok will prioritize the agency's content on its FYP, or will also amplify the agency's content. Yeah, it is the same with the Google collaboration with the fact-checking organization. So Google funded around 11.6 million rupiah, or around 815 US dollar. Yeah, it's to empower the fact-checking organization. But the main problem with Google, I think we all know that it's in their Google AdSense algorithm. Currently, there's a lot of websites they name themselves content creator incubator that created news, but apparently because they don't do verification, so they just end up amplifying unverified information, and they got money from Google AdSense, and even until now Google hasn't give more incentive for news organization that verify the content. So it's the same incentive for the news organization that verify the content and for the content creator. Yeah. And then, what are the real challenge for the researcher to get to handle or to tackle this information is actually to get the data. So I mentioned before that we are working with monitoring hate speech toward vulnerable community. There's also another research when I and my colleague, Associate Professor Dery Wijaya, we are monitoring online polarization message on WhatsApp. But the real challenge for us is to get the data. I believe you all know, for instance, like X or Twitter, since last February, will no longer support free access to Twitter API, and then we have to pay. The cheapest one is $100 for 3,000 recent tweets. So recent tweets, not even a historical data. Yeah. If we want to get more tweets, we have to pay around 5,000 US dollar for 300,000 tweets. It's around 75 million per month. Yeah, I believe there's no Indonesian researcher coming from university can afford that cost, yeah. Because, for instance, like the ministry funding for Indonesian researcher from university is only around 50 million or 100 million per year. But the Twitter cost is 79 million per month. So it's really, really expensive. TikTok's also strict data, and then Meta, if you've been using CrowdTangle, you've been enjoying CrowdTangle, Meta now pauses new users from registering to CrowdTangle, and I believe it will be some of the engineer already resigned, and then it will be closed very soon. So what are the consequences, for research and democracy? It is now a crucial time for journalists, researchers, fact checkers, even the government agencies that work to tackle disinformation or digital propaganda. Because in this election, it will be the largest election in Southeast Asia. There will be around 20,000 seats in the legislative body from the national level to the local level that will be compete. And then there will be 271 local leadership position from governor and mayor to be compete, yeah. And so you can imagine the scale of misinformation, fake news, and disinformation in this 2024 election. On X and TikTok, it's almost impossible to investigate the actors and the networks that spread disinformation. And as you know, there has been many research studying that disinformation spread farther, faster, and deeper than the truth, or even than the correction, yeah. And due to the limited access to identify, mitigate, and tackle this information will be longer than before. So we also know that this information coming from the video-based platform is multimodal. So opening access should also mean opening access to all types of content, not just the caption. So at the end of the day, if this problem persists, platforms' effort to tackle this information do not really address the main problem. And I imagine there will be fire hose of falsehood. And I imagine that journalists, fact checker, even researcher will be really tired really tired in tackling this information, yeah. I think that's all from me. If you have any question or want to discuss something else related to this, let me know. Happy to have it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ika, for that great presentation. Now we'll open the floor to any questions.
Hi, Dr. Ika. Thank you very much for that very comprehensive presentation. My question, my question pertains to a fairly recent article that you wrote, titled like the disinformation in the city, right? The one where it addresses various challenges about this particular topic, especially in the context of Australian and Indonesian local governments. And I think the article is a great article. It very comprehensively describes very multifaceted ways in which this information can happen across the board. And what it highlights, I think that is interesting to me, is that this information can happen on both sides of the political spectrum, where in some areas there is a trust deficit in the government due to an influx of falsehoods or conspiracy theories that invoke public outrage. And on the other end, governments also engage in the targeted takedowns of certain websites under the guise of moderating public content. And so this all kind of seems to feed into a cycle of a continued polarization, where as more quote unquote moderation happens on social media, it also is painted in a light that seems fairly restrictive, or individuals on the other side of the political spectrum paint it as a form of censorship, which increases hatred towards, say, like the government, for example. If the government is the one trying to do the moderating, right, it increases that particular cycle. So it all just kind of seems to feed into further polarization and a further like perpetuation of hatred. So in that sense, especially reflecting on the upcoming Indonesian 2024 elections, what do you think are some strategies that you can use, especially in the form of centralized fact-checking, like you guys collaborating with researchers, that you can use to assuage people that fact-checkers can remain impartial in political discourse rather than continuing to feed into the polarization and the narrative that this is just another form of bias like censorship, etc.?
Thank you. So fact checkers, right now, I think at the beginning or at the early stage of fact checkers establishment, they came from the communities. They came from the communities. But nowadays, there are a lot of funding for the fact checkers organization, including from the government and also from the platform. So for instance, like during the Papua conflict in 2019, there were fact checkers that only checking the government version of information. So they don't, even though they were established by the community because of the political economy relation, they are siding with the government. Siding, I mean, they only check the disinformation that attacking the government. So interestingly, like 2 months ago, I have like a webinar organized by the largest fact-checking organization in Indonesia, and then I said like, okay, I want to talk about TikTok. I want to talk about TikTok disinformation because based on my research, there's a lot of pro-Russia propaganda on TikTok, and I want to criticize that. But then the fact checkers said that you can still talk about TikTok, but let's not put it in the title, or let's not put it in your title, because we are working with TikTok and then we don't want them to take their funding or we don't want them to stop give us funding. And then I said, okay, so at this stage, I'm highly skeptical, especially if I already know that they got funding. But then I believe there's always mechanism, to check that. For instance, there's also fact checkers or fact checking organization established by the news organization. They can function as a check and balance if other fact-checking organization siding with government or with platforms. What we are doing right now, I and my colleague from Data and Democracy Research Hub in Monash, Indonesia, we are now establishing networks that will push the platform. So we are working with at least 4 think tank and CSOs, and each of us has our own area of research, but we agree that we will put the result. For instance, when we are monitoring hate speech, we will document that, and then later we will go to the platform and say, look, you said that you already tackled this problem, but we still have the evidence. We still find that hate speech or disinformation or a polarizing message in your platform. So it means you have to work harder, yeah, because all this time, like the PRing strategy, like we are collaborating, we are building the capacity of the fact checking organization and journalists, but that's just not enough. So I think keep pressuring them, because if not, like we are advocating using the data, yeah. If not, there won't be enough pressuring. There will not be enough pressure from us to the platform. I hope I answer your question.
Does anyone else have any questions? All right. Okay. So that concludes our presentation. Now we'll be passing it on to the next speaker.